AITA for walking out after my bride said I ruined her love story with my best friend? I'm Logan, 34, and I was supposed to be the groom who cried during the vows, not the guy walking out of his own reception while my bride was still holding the microphone. I had spent months telling myself I was just stressed, that weddings made everyone weird, and that my best friend being a little too involved was nothing. I even practiced our first dance in my socks in the kitchen because I didn't want to step on her dress. That's how badly I wanted the day to go right. Marissa and I had been together long enough that nobody was surprised when we got engaged. Our families were already acting like we were married before we even picked a date. My mother, Diane, loved her. Marissa's father, Robert, used to clap me on the shoulder and call me the steady one, which I took as a compliment at the time. And Evan was my best friend. Not just a guy I grabbed beers with once in a while. He was the friend who had seen me through breakups, bad holidays, stupid decisions, family scares, and every awkward stage of becoming an adult. When I asked him to be my best man, he hugged me hard and said, "About time, man. I've been waiting for you to stop being terrified of happiness." That was Evan. Charming, quick, always able to say something that sounded deeper than it probably was. At first, his involvement in the wedding made sense. He knew me better than most people. Marissa liked him. He helped with playlist ideas, timing for the rehearsal dinner, guest logistics, and calming Marissa down whenever the planning made her spiral. I was grateful for it. I really was. Marissa could be warm in a way that made the whole room feel chosen. She would stand in the kitchen with her hair clipped up, eating cereal out of a mug because all the bowls were in the dishwasher, and tease me about crying during our vows. "You know you're going to cry before I do, right?" she'd say. "I'm already budgeting tissues into the ceremony," I'd tell her. She'd laugh, lean into me, and for a few seconds, everything felt exactly how it was supposed to feel. That was what made the signs so easy to explain away. When someone is loving half the time, you start negotiating with the other half. The first thing I noticed was the texting. Marissa and Evan had always texted because he was part of our circle, but suddenly his name was lighting up her phone late at night. She would be sitting beside me on the couch, half watching a show, then smile down at her screen in this soft, private way that used to be mine. One night I said, "What's so funny?" She turned the phone slightly away, not dramatically, just enough. "Evan being dumb," she said. "What did he say?" "You wouldn't get it." That landed harder than it should have. I stared at the TV and pretended I was still watching. Another time, I saw a message pop up on her phone while it was on the kitchen counter. The contact name was just E, with a little white heart beside it. I didn't pick up the phone. I didn't open anything. It was right there while I was pouring coffee. I asked, "Why is Evan saved as just E?" Marissa looked at me like I had asked why water was wet. "Because his name is Evan." "Seriously, are we doing this?" "I'm just asking." "No, you're not. You're making it weird." That became the phrase. Don't make it weird. If Evan suggested a song for our first dance, I was making it weird. If Evan knew Marissa had been upset after an argument I never told him about, I was making it weird. If Marissa laughed harder at something Evan said in a group chat than anything I'd said all week, I was making it weird. I told myself I didn't want to be that guy. I didn't want to be the jealous fiancé who policed friendships. I had seen men do that, and I hated it. So instead of pushing, I watched. I paid attention. Then the wedding planning started making less sense. Marissa showed me an updated seating chart one evening and said the planner had moved Evan closer to the head table because it would make speeches smoother. But I had been copied on the earlier email, and I knew the planner had put him with the rest of the wedding party. The change had come from Marissa's account. When I asked about it, she sighed and rubbed her forehead. "Logan, I have 1,000 things in my head." Maybe I asked. Maybe the planner suggested it. "Why are we fighting about chairs?" "We're not fighting. I'm asking why you said the planner did it." "Because I don't remember every tiny decision." Evan was suddenly in every tiny decision. He had an opinion on the cake flavor. He had an opinion on the reception lighting. He had an opinion on whether our first dance song should be classic or modern. When I joked that maybe he should just marry the spreadsheet, Marissa didn't laugh. "He's trying to help," she said. "I know. It just feels like some things should be ours." "They are ours. You're just stressed." By the week of the wedding, I felt like I was living with two versions of reality. In one version, I was about to marry the woman I loved, surrounded by the people who loved us. In the other version, my fiancé and my best friend were speaking a language I wasn't allowed to understand, and every time I noticed, they made me feel small for noticing. The rehearsal dinner was when the bad feeling stopped being a feeling. Everyone was in that glowing pre-wedding mood, laughing too loudly, hugging too long, pretending the stress hadn't nearly broken half of us. There were candles on the tables, clinking glasses, and relatives introducing themselves to people they would forget by dessert. Evan stood up to give a casual toast. I expected jokes. I expected something embarrassing about me. He started that way, talking about how long he'd known me and how he never thought I'd become the kind of guy who cared about napkin colors. People laughed. Then he turned toward Marissa. All I ever wanted was for Marissa to be happy, he said. Even if life didn't write everything the way we once thought it would. The room did that thing where it stayed quiet a beat too long. Marissa's eyes filled immediately. Not a polite tear. Not a sweet wedding week tear. She looked wrecked. She lifted her glass toward him and said, "That means more than you know." I felt my mother look at me from the next table. I didn't look back because I didn't want to see what she had seen. After dinner, while people were gathering coats and gift bags, Tessa pulled me aside near the gift table. She was one of Marissa's bridesmaids, and normally she was loud, sarcastic, and impossible to intimidate. That night, she kept checking over her shoulder. "Logan," she said quietly, "you deserve to know some things before Saturday." My stomach dropped. "What things?" Her mouth opened, then closed. Lacey, Marissa's maid of honor, walked past us, and Tessa's whole face changed. "I'm sorry," Tessa said. "Forget I said that. I'm just tired." "Tessa, I can't." Then she walked away. That night, I couldn't sleep. Marissa was in the shower, humming like nothing was wrong, and our shared tablet was on the nightstand. We used it for wedding planning, vendor emails, shared notes, seating chart files, the photo album link, all of it. I wasn't digging through her private account. I didn't know her passwords and didn't want to. But notifications were already open on the screen from the planning apps and synced messages tied to the wedding group. One preview stopped me cold. "Marissa, he's the right choice. I know that. But Evan feels like the part of me I'm burying." I sat down on the edge of the bed and felt the room tilt. Another notification came from a bridesmaid chat preview. Lacey had written, "Just make it honest but poetic. People cry at weddings. They'll understand." Then there was a seating chart email forwarded from Marissa to the planner, asking to move Evan closer because he matters to the emotional flow of the night. Emotional flow. I took screenshots of what was already visible. My hands were shaking so badly I had to retake it because it was blurry. I didn't know what I planned to do with them. Part of me felt ridiculous, like I was collecting evidence against my own life. Another part of me felt a relief, so sharp it almost hurt. I wasn't imagining it. Marissa came out of the bathroom in a robe, hair wet, face soft. "You okay?" she asked. I locked the tablet and set it down. "Just tired." She climbed into bed and kissed my shoulder. I lay there beside her all night, staring at the ceiling, choosing between the woman I loved and the evidence in my hand. By morning, the wedding machine had started moving. Family texts, timeline reminders, suit hanging on the closet door, rings in their box, photographer arrival time, people asking where they should park. My mother sending me a message that said, "Breathe. I love you." I almost confronted Marissa. More than once. I stood outside the room where she was getting ready and heard her laughing with the bridesmaids. I had my phone in my hand. I could have knocked. I could have asked her right there what she meant by burying Evan. But I kept thinking about the vows. That sounds stupid now, but it was real then. I told myself that if she walked down the aisle, looked me in the eye, and promised to choose me, maybe that would mean something. Maybe the messages were panic. Maybe Evan was a ghost she needed to let go of. Maybe marriage would be the line. I chose the version of her I loved over the evidence in my hand. That was my last mistake. The ceremony itself was beautiful, which almost made it worse. Marissa looked stunning. She cried during her vows, and when she said she chose me, my chest cracked open with relief. I cried too. Of course I did. Everyone laughed softly when I had to pause and wipe my face. For a couple of hours, I let myself believe we had made it through whatever that strange chapter was. Then came the photos. The photographer kept saying, "Bride and groom closer, please. Best man, step back just a little." It happened 3 times. Marissa kept angling her body toward Evan without seeming to realize it. Evan adjusted her veil once, his fingers lingering near her shoulder. She whispered something to him, and he looked down with that private smile I had seen too many times. I glanced over and caught Cal watching them too. Cal was one of my groomsmen, blunt in the way only a loyal friend can be. He didn't say anything at first. He just stepped beside me while the photographer changed lenses. "You good?" he asked quietly. I looked at Marissa laughing at something Evan said. "I'm trying to be." Cal's jaw tightened. "That's not a no." "No," I said. "It's not." The reception started after that. Dinner was good. People danced. The DJ made a joke about how everyone needed to save energy for cake. The guest book was filling up with sweet notes. The shared photo album already had blurry selfies from cousins and a clip of my mother dancing with Robert, both of them laughing. For a little while, everything felt normal enough to hurt. Speeches started after dinner. My mother kept hers short and sweet. Robert gave a father of the bride speech that was a little stiff, but kind. Evan spoke again, but this time he kept it safe, which almost made me angrier. He joked about my bad dancing. He told Marissa she looked beautiful. He said he was honored to stand beside us. Then Marissa took the microphone. There was a small feedback squeal, and everyone laughed politely. She held a champagne flute in one hand, the mic in the other. The videographer shifted closer. The photographer lifted the camera. Marissa smiled at me first. "I want to thank everyone for being here," she said. "Today has been overwhelming in the most beautiful way. Normal, sweet, safe." She thanked her parents. She thanked my mother. She thanked the bridesmaids. She even made a joke about me practicing our first dance in socks, and people laughed because it was cute and true. Then her voice changed. "I've been thinking a lot about timing," she said. "About how there are love stories that happen because the timing is right. And there are love stories that never get to happen because someone else gets there first." My fork was halfway to my plate. I put it down slowly. The room went still in that terrible way where nobody wants to admit they heard the same thing. Marissa turned toward Evan. "Some people arrive in your life and change you," she said. "Some people understand parts of you before you even know how to explain them. And sometimes life is messy. Sometimes the person who feels like the movie version of love isn't the person standing beside you at the altar." I saw the photographer lower the camera. Evan didn't stop her. He stared at the table, but he didn't stop her. Marissa looked back at me, eyes shining like she thought this was brave. "You were always good to me, Logan," she said. "But sometimes being good isn't the same as being the one. And I think a part of me will always wonder what my perfect love story with him would have been if you hadn't gotten there first." No one moved. Not one chair. Not one glass. Not one cough. My mother stood up halfway, one hand gripping the edge of her chair. Robert's face went gray. Lacey had her hand over her mouth, but not in shock. More like she knew the speech had gone somewhere even she couldn't spin. And me? Everything inside me went quiet. It wasn't that she had feelings for Evan. That hurt, but I already knew enough to suspect it. It was that she had taken the most public, expensive, emotionally loaded room of my life and used it to tell everyone I was the interruption in her real love story. She wasn't confessing a past. She was announcing a preference. I stood up. Marissa blinked, still holding the microphone. "Logan," she said softly, like I was the one making the moment uncomfortable. I held out my hand. "Can I have the mic?" For a second, she didn't move. Then maybe out of habit, maybe because the whole room was watching, she handed it to me. The microphone felt heavier than it should have. I looked at her first. "Thank you for finally saying it out loud." Her face changed. I turned slightly, not to perform, not to make a speech, but because every person in that room had just been invited into my humiliation. "I came here today to marry someone who said I was her future," I said. "I just found out I was only the obstacle in a story she was still telling herself about another man." A few people looked down at their plates. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." I took off my ring. My hand shook once, just once, and then steadied. I placed it on the table in front of Marissa. I'm not standing in the way anymore. Then I set the microphone down and walked out. Behind me, the room erupted in the quietest chaos I've ever heard. Chairs scraping. Someone saying my name. The DJ cutting the background music too late, leaving this ugly little half-beat of a love song hanging in the air. Marissa's voice cracked behind me. "Logan, wait. That's not what I meant." I turned once at the edge of the room. "It was the clearest thing you said all day." Then I kept walking. Cal caught up to me before I reached the parking lot. He didn't grab me. He didn't give me some dramatic speech. He just walked beside me like a guardrail. "You don't owe anyone a performance right now," he said. I nodded because I couldn't speak. My phone was already vibrating. Family group chat. Wedding party chat. Unknown relatives. Someone had uploaded a clip to the shared photo album before anyone realized what was happening. Messages flashed across the screen. "Is Logan okay? Please don't send that video around." Too late. Half the cousins already saw it. Nobody contact him unless he asks. Then Marissa called. I watched her name light up, and for the first time all day, I made a decision without arguing with myself. I blocked her number. Then I blocked Evan. Then I left the wedding group chat, blocked both of them on social media, and texted my mother. "Please don't forward messages from Marissa or Evan. Anything important needs to be in writing." She replied almost immediately. "I'm leaving now. I love you. I am so proud of how you handled that." That broke me more than the speech did. I stood beside Cal's car in my wedding suit, bent over with my hands on my knees, and finally started crying. Cal didn't tell me to calm down. He just said, "Get in the car. We'll figure out the rest later." Back inside, I found out later Marissa tried to follow me. The dress slowed her down. The bridesmaids surrounded her, half comforting her and half trying to keep her from making it worse. Robert tried to tell everyone to calm down and not waste the wedding, which sounded insane even to him once he said it. Evan apparently sat frozen for a full minute. Then he started telling people, "Nothing physical happened." That was his defense. Nothing physical happened. Cal heard it before he left and snapped. "You let her humiliate him and then called it closure." Evan said, "I didn't know she was going to say it like that." Cal said, "But you knew there was an it." Evan didn't answer. My family left soon after I did. Not dramatically, not in a parade, but one table at a time. My mother walked past Marissa without stopping. Later she told me Marissa reached for her hand and said, "Diane, please, I didn't mean to hurt him." My mother said, "Then you should have tried not hurting him." The next morning, I woke up on Cal's couch still wearing my dress shirt. My tie was on the floor. My phone had so many notifications it looked broken. I didn't open the voicemails from Marissa. I didn't answer texts from people asking for the full story. I opened my email instead. I emailed the videographer first. "Please preserve the full unedited footage from the reception speeches. Do not delete, alter, or release edits without written approval from both contracted parties." Then I emailed the venue and vendors. I asked for final invoices in writing. I asked what could be canceled, what could be redirected, and what was non-refundable. I didn't make emotional phone calls. I didn't trust myself on the phone, and I didn't want anyone later claiming I had agreed to something I hadn't. The honeymoon was a mess. Some parts were non-refundable. Some could be canceled. One credit had to stay under Marissa's name because of how it had been booked. I let the written policies decide. No begging. No bargaining. Just paperwork. Then I checked the marriage license situation. I had no idea what had or hadn't been filed yet, and I wasn't about to assume anything because I felt betrayed. I spoke with a lawyer, explained the timeline, and asked what needed to be documented. The answer was less dramatic than people online would probably want, but it mattered. Put everything in writing. Preserve evidence. Don't threaten. Don't negotiate through relatives. So that's what I did. I sent one message to both families. Due to the wedding not proceeding as planned, gifts will be returned or redirected upon request. I'm asking that all communication about logistics be sent by email. I will not be discussing Marissa or Evan through group chats. Robert called me within minutes. I didn't answer. He emailed an hour later. His message was awkward and formal at first, like he was trying to handle a customer complaint and a family disaster at the same time. He said emotions were high, Marissa was devastated, and maybe we could all sit down once everyone had slept. I replied, "I'm not available for a sit-down. Please send any logistical issues in writing." He didn't reply for 2 days. Tessa did. Her text came from a number I didn't have saved. "Logan, it's Tessa. I should have told you sooner. I'm sorry. You deserved to know before you were standing there." Then the screenshots came through. They weren't cartoon villain confessions. Somehow that made them worse. Marissa had written, "I need to say something before becoming a wife. Not to hurt him, just to be honest." Lacey replied, "Honest but poetic. Don't make it sound like you're choosing Evan. Make it sound like closure." Marissa, "But it is closure." Logan is the right choice on paper. Evan is the person who feels like the movie version of love. Another bridesmaid wrote, "Are you sure this belongs in a wedding speech?" Marissa replied, "If Logan really loves me, he'll understand vulnerability." There it was. She had expected me to sit there and absorb it. She had expected the room to call it brave. She had expected my love to make me quiet. Tessa sent another message. She made it sound like it was going to be honest, not cruel. I got scared. I'm sorry. I stared at the screenshots for a long time. I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired in a way sleep couldn't fix. But I also felt something solid settle in my chest. I hadn't ruined anything. I had stopped participating in my own humiliation. By the end of the week, the video had made its way through both families and most of our friends. Not publicly viral. Not posted for strangers. Just private group chats, cousins sending it to cousins, wedding guests asking each other if they had seen the whole thing. People who had been confused stopped asking me to explain. One friend texted, "You don't have to say anything. We saw it." Another wrote, "I'm sorry. Evan told people you overreacted." Then I watched the clip. That was how Evan handled it. He tried to shrink the betrayal down to a technicality. Nothing physical happened. It was emotional closure. I never wanted to hurt him. I didn't know she'd say it that way. The problem for Evan was that every version made him sound worse. If nothing physical happened, then he had helped build an emotional affair strong enough to be mentioned in wedding vows and still thought he was innocent. If it was closure, then he knew something needed closing. If he didn't know she'd say it that way, then he knew she planned to say something. People started pulling away from him. Not everyone. Some people love neutrality because it costs them nothing. But enough of our mutual friends stopped inviting him around that I heard about it without asking. Marissa's circle split too. Lacey tried to defend her at first. She was overwhelmed, she told someone. It was raw honesty. Weddings bring up complicated feelings. Then the screenshots spread to the few people who needed to see them. Not online. Not blasted everywhere. But when someone tried to tell me Marissa had been caught up in the moment, I sent the screenshot where Lacey literally helped frame the speech. After that, Lacey went quiet. Marissa found ways around being blocked. Emails, voicemails from unknown numbers, messages through relatives until my mother shut that down. The first voicemail I listened to was 3 minutes long. "Logan, I know you're angry, but you're making this sound uglier than it was. I was trying to be honest before we started forever. That should count for something. I chose you. I was standing there in the dress. Doesn't that matter?" I deleted it. Another email had the subject line, "Please read." She wrote that she had been overwhelmed by the emotion of the day. She said Evan represented an unresolved chapter, not a choice. She said I embarrassed her by walking out. That line almost made me laugh. I embarrassed her. A few days later, another voicemail came through. "If you loved me, you would understand that people have complicated feelings. You don't just throw away a whole relationship because someone was vulnerable for 1 minute. 1 minute. That was what she called it. Not the months of late-night texts. Not the secret contact name. Not the seating chart. Not the rehearsal dinner toast. Not the bridesmaid chat. Not the fact that she looked at me in front of everyone we loved and said I was the reason she didn't get her perfect love story with another man. 1 minute. Robert emailed me again after he saw the screenshots. His tone was different. I watched the full video, he wrote. I don't know what to say except that I'm sorry. I wanted everyone to calm down that night because I didn't understand how much had happened before it. I do now. I appreciated that. I didn't reply beyond logistics. Marissa sent one final long email 2 weeks after the wedding. It was the kind of email someone writes when they think enough pretty words can rearrange reality. She said she loved me. She said she had made a mistake. She said Evan had been a fantasy, and I was real. She said walking away proved I didn't understand her heart. At the end, she wrote, I needed closure. I wish you had loved me enough to let me have it. I answered once. You didn't confess a past. You announced a preference. You didn't need closure. You needed an audience. Do not contact me again except through necessary written logistics. Then I filtered her emails. I kept no contact after that. Not the dramatic kind where you post quotes and make sure people know you're healing. The practical kind. Blocked numbers. Filtered emails. No messages through family. No checking Evan's social media. No asking who was on whose side. There were still awful days. People like to imagine dignity feels clean. It doesn't. Sometimes dignity is sitting on the floor beside a box of returned gifts, feeling like an idiot because you wrote thank you cards for people who watched your marriage end before the cake was cut. Sometimes it was seeing the empty honeymoon folder in my email and feeling my throat close. Sometimes it was opening a drawer and finding the ring box. Sometimes it was remembering Marissa laughing in the kitchen with cereal in a mug and having to remind myself that someone can be tender in one moment and cruel in another. But the longer I stayed away, the clearer the whole thing became. Marissa wanted the safety of me and the tragedy of Evan. Evan wanted to be wanted without being responsible. And they both needed me to play the role of the insecure guy who would either swallow the humiliation or explode badly enough to make them look misunderstood. I gave them neither. I didn't ruin Marissa's reputation. She used a microphone for that. I didn't destroy my friendship with Evan. He sat there and let my bride call him her perfect love story in front of me. I didn't turn people against them. Their own words traveled farther than any rant I could have written. I lost a wedding that day. I lost a woman I loved. I lost the person I thought was my best friend. But I kept myself. And after everything that happened, that felt like the only vow worth honoring. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.